Well, welcome to the last lesson in our integer unit, or in chapter 2. In this last lesson, we're going to compare and order integers. So what I want you to be able to do is take and put integers in order from the smallest number until the largest number. And we can use number lines to do this, and also the concepts of positive negatives. So let's just do some background stuff here. What have you heard about sea level? Well, you should know that a sea level is where the sea and the land meet, and it's the top of the sea. Now, when we talk about sea level, that's something that we use an awful lot in math, because there's a positive, which is above the sea, and there's a negative, which is underwater. And we let the level of the sea be the zero. Now, how would you describe the elevation of a mountain? Well, the mountain is above the sea level, so that it's actually going to be positive. Now, the Mariana Trench in the North Pacific Ocean is one of the deepest parts of the ocean. It's actually miles deep. And because it's underwater, that would be referred to as negative. In fact, it's 11 kilometers deep, to give you an idea how deep it actually is. So as we start talking with positive and negative numbers, the first thing we need to do is start putting things in order. So I'm going to let you just start with just some positive numbers. You've got 885, 342, 889, and 311. I'd like you to put those in order from least to greatest, please. Pause the recording and do that quickly. All right, well, how do you do this? Well, the first thing you need to do is identify which one is the smallest. Now, we normally take a look at the hundreds in this situation, because you have 800, 300, 800, and 300. Well, the 300 numbers are smaller than the 800 numbers, because 300 is less than 800. So we're going to work with the two 300 numbers. So now, since there's 300 and 300, that's a tie. Now we move over to the tens place. This has 4 tens, and this has 1 10. So this number 4 represents 40, and this number 1 represents 10. So since 40 is greater than 10, 311 is the smallest number, followed by 342. After that, we have to compare the 800 numbers. Well, this is 800 and 800, so in the hundreds place, they're a tie. There's 80 and 80, 8 tens, so that's a tie. So taking a look at the ones place, this is 5 ones, which is 5, and this is 9 ones, which is 9. So the next largest number is going to be 885, followed by 889. Now, if you want to actually write down what I said, there it is for you to write it down. But most of you should have no difficulty putting these numbers in order from least to greatest. So if you take a look at the final listing, this is the final listing. You've got 311, 342, 885, and 889. Now, if you were to put these numbers on a number line, being 0 on the left, and you first, as you go along, you're going to encounter 311. You're going to go a little bit further, 311, 320, 330, and then you're going to be in 340s. You hit 342. Then you get a long ways until you get to the 800s. And then you're going to hit 885 and 89. So on the number line, they're going to be in the same order. They're just going to be spread out a little bit. Which of these four numbers is closest to 0? Well, on the left-hand side, the 0 is way over here on your number line, and you travel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until you get to 311. So the one that's closest is going to be the 311, because it's, it's closest to the left of your number list, or it's to the nearest, the first number you hit to the right as you go past the 0. Which one's farthest from the 0? Well, this is 889 units to the right. So 889 is the one which is the farthest from 0. Now, if I want to put numbers on the number line, again, I've got my 0 on this. I'd like you to take and put positive 1, positive 3, and positive 4 on your number line, please. So pause the recording and do that. Okay, so you should have placed them like this. The 1 is 1 unit to the right, so you jump once. There's your positive 1. Next comes the 3, so 1, 2, 3. There's your positive 3. And here's your 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice the 4 is positive, the 3 is positive, and the 1 is positive, which means everything is going to be on the right side of 0, because this is the positive side. Now, 1 is 1 unit from the 0, 3 is 3 units from the 0, and 4 is 4 units from the 0. Now, here's some negative numbers. Place them on the number line. Pause the recording and do that. Okay. Now, we start with the 0 still. This is 1 unit, and that's a negative. So the negative means it's going to be on the negative side or the left side of the 0. And this is going to be 1 unit. So 1 jump, there's your negative 1. The negative 3 is going to be 3 jumps left. 1, 2, 3. and your negative 4 will be 4 jumps left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 4 units to the left of the 0, 3 units to the left of the 0, and 1 unit to the left of the 0. Okay? Now here's a common mistake. Bob was told to place the following integers on a number line, and here's what he did. I want you to look at that for a second, and I want you to think about what he did wrong. Okay, hopefully you figure out what's doing wrong here, because he's done one thing right. He's got the negatives on the left-hand side, but he's also got a problem here. He's missed the fact that these here are distances from the 0, and he thinks that 1 is less than 3, and 3 being less than 4, so to put them in order on a number line, you've got to go 1, 3, 4. Now that would work if you were in positive numbers, because that would be 1 unit to the right, 3 units to the right, and 4 units to the right, but these are negative numbers. So the negative 1 should be 1 unit to the left right here. The negative 3 should be 1, 2, 3 units to the left right there. And of course the 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the left, so that's right there. So what he did is he's confused the magnitude or the numbers, and he's gotten them incorrect that way. Now, when we compare integers and we want you to tell which is greater or less, we're going to be using what are called the greater than and less than signs. All right. Now, the greater than sign is when the Pac-Man eats the bigger numbers. That's the easiest way you've been taught. Some of you were taught with alligators, but the opening is always to the larger side, and the small closed side is always open to the least side. Okay. So if I've got two numbers here, okay, 3 and 4, if the 3 is first, then the 4 is greater, so the Pac-Man will eat the 4. If I have the 4 first and the 3 second, now the Pac-Man's going to change and face the other direction because the 4 is first. Now if I was reading this, you could say 3 is less than 4, or 4 is greater than 3. Okay, and we can use these two things, the greater than and less than sign, to compare integers. So this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to put the Pac-Mans on, or the greater than and less than signs on the 4 blanks here. So pause the recording and put them in place. All right. Now if you think of a number line, all right, here's your number line. All right, you think of where 0 is. It's right in the middle, right? As you go to the right, you're going to encounter numbers. And the first number you're going to encounter is 1. As you keep going, then you're going to encounter the 4. Now the 4 is farther from the 0, so it is greater. So the sign you should have used is this one here. The 1 is less than the 4. The 4 is farther to the right. That makes it bigger. Now for this one, the 5 is greater because you're going to hit it after you hit the 4. So this one here, the 5 is greater than the 4. 95 is farther to the right, so you're going to encounter 28 first, so that means that 95 is greater. And of course, the 37 is greater than the 12, and it's positive. Notice that this didn't have a positive or negative sign, so we know that it just defaults to being a positive 37. So what rule can you use to describe how to compare integers that are both positive? Well, the larger the number, the larger the magnitude, it's always going to be bigger. So you simply put, the bigger the positive number, the bigger the number. Okay? So if you put it on the number line, the ones that are on the right are always going to be greater than the numbers which would be towards the left of them. Okay? Now let's take a look at the negatives. I'd like you to take and put your negative, show you greater than or less than signs on these 4 blanks, please. So pause the recording and do that now. All right. So -1 and -4. Now if you think about it, this is my number line. Here's my 0 in the middle. And as I start going to the left, I get -1, and then I got -2, and then I got -3. All right. So as I'm moving to the left-hand side, my numbers are increasing in magnitude, but they are also getting smaller. All right. So in this case, -1 is actually greater than -4 because everything on this side over here is greater, and this side over here is always less. All right. So we have the less side and we have the greater side. Okay. So since this -1 is it's greater than the -4, which would be less. So the sign should be pointing, the alligator is going to eat the +1. Now in this case, we've got a -5 and a -4. So which one's closer to the right? it's going to be the negative 4, so this one is greater. Negative 95 and negative 28, well, it'll be way over here on the left. Here would be negative 95, and then over here, negative 28. Since the negative 28 is on the right of it, that means the negative 28 is larger. And negative 37 and 12, negative 12 would be here. The negative 12 is on the right. Negative 37 is on the left. So since the negative 12 is further to the right, that makes it the larger number. So here's where it gets kind of weird. What rule can you use to compare integers which are both negative? Well, the larger the magnitude, the less the number is. So to put it in other words, the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. The bigger the negative, the smaller it is. Negative 3 is bigger than negative 1, so negative 3 is smaller than negative 1. Okay, so here are some mixed ones I want you to do. Okay, I want you to take and put these, or put the positive and negative signs on these 8 blanks, please. So pause the recording and do that. All right, well, let's take a look. Negative and positive. Now you're going to find a pattern here. All right, now remember, 0 divides things up, and the positives on the right are always going to be on the right. The negatives will always be on the left, and since we're comparing positives and negatives, the positives will always be bigger. Okay, so positive 4 is on the right. That makes it greater than negative 1. Positive 4 is on the right. That makes it greater than negative 5. Positive 28 is on the right. It's greater than negative 95, and so on and so forth. Now on this one over here, we've switched the order. The positive one's on this side now, but it's still positive, so it's still greater than the negative. So positive numbers are always going to be greater than negative numbers because they're on the right side of the number line. Okay? Let's move on a little bit. So here's a bunch of stuff that I want you to take a look at. Use the proper sign to figure out which goes where. So these are all mixed up. See if you can figure it out. So pause the recording and do the next 8. Well, let's see how you did. Negative 2, negative 5. The bigger the negative, the smaller it is. So that means negative 2 is bigger. Positive 53, negative 53. Positives are always greater than negatives, so this is going to be bigger. This one over here, positives are always greater than negatives. That means it's going to go this way. All right? And over here, this is negative 2,000, but it's negative, and positive 1 is on the right. So that means that positive 1 is bigger because the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. Again, the bigger the negative, the smaller it is, so the positive is always greater than the negative. That means it's going to be this side greater. Negative number, huge negative number, but that's a long ways to the left-hand side of the 0. Positive is always greater. Positive 2, greater than negative 2, and 415 is always greater than a negative, so that's what you got there. So hopefully you got those right. So let's see if you can select from the list. Here are negative 4. I'd like you to circle the numbers below which are greater than negative 4. So pause the recording and circle the numbers greater than negative 4. All right, let's take a look. Well, our first number is negative 23. The bigger the negative, the smaller it is. So is negative 23 greater than negative 4? No, because it's a bigger negative. That makes it smaller. Negative 5, still a bigger negative, so it's smaller than negative 4, so it can't be greater. Negative 3. Now negative 4 is bigger than negative 3. The bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So negative 3 is actually larger. It's to the right of negative 4. That makes it bigger. Positive 4, of course, anything positive is always greater than a negative, so positive 4 is greater. It should be circled. Negative 8 is on the left-hand side of negative 4, so that makes positive 4 greater, so this one should not be circled. And 23, no sign, that makes it positive, so it's on the right-hand side of negative 4, so that makes this here to be the biggest of the two numbers. Okay, so now I want you to pause the recording, and I want you to circle the ones which are less than negative 2. Okay, so circle the ones that are less than negative 2. Pause the recording and do that. All right, so here we go. Negative 23, bigger than negative, so that means that's negative. That should be circled. And I'm just going to undo all of them here so you can see the ones that are circled. Now the ones that are in parentheses are the ones that are circled, and you'll notice they're all on the left-hand side of -2. So that means that they're going to be less. So you should be circling all the negative numbers which are larger than 2. Now +4 is greater and +23 is greater because they're on the right-hand side of -2. Okay, now let's get into some of the more difficult parts. I'd like you to take this list of numbers, there's 5 of them, and I want you to put all 5 of these numbers in order from least to greatest. So pause the recording and do that right now. All right, well, let's start with the first one. If you remember that the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. So -8 is the smallest, followed by -5, followed by -2. So this is the way it should be for least to greatest. In these 3 numbers, -4 is going to be on the left-hand side of the 0. That comes first. And of course 2 next, and then 6. So you should have -4, 2, 6. The biggest negative is -57. So that means that's going to be the first number. -12 is next, and then 32. And now we've got bigger negative. The biggest negative is -3. The next biggest negative is -2. And then, of course, followed by 2 and then 3. So on a number line, it would look like this. And, of course, the biggest negative is -23. So you'd be starting with -23, -12, and then, of course, 14 comes before 71. So that's what that would look like. Okay, let's go backwards. Let's have you take these numbers and now put these from greatest to least. So pause the recording and do that. All right, now what we want to do here is you want to imagine the number line, and you want to start from the right this time, the biggest number. Everything on the right is largest, so you're looking for the largest positive number you can get, and that's +5. So +5 is going to be first. Now as you travel to the 0, you're going to start getting to the next one, which is going to be the -3, and then lastly the -5. So remember, you're starting from the right, and this time you're going to the left. The biggest number is +5, and the next one is -3 followed by -5. Okay, for this one here, thinking of where the positive number is because you want the biggest one. So 2,442 is the largest, and as you travel left to the 0, you hit it. Then you're going to hit 123 on the negative side, so that comes next. And then lastly, on the very, very left, you're going to find 2,414 negative, so that means that's going to be in the last, at least. Okay, this one here, the largest number is going to be on the 2, and then as you travel, you're going to hit the 0, and then you're going to hit the -4. And of course, on this one, the biggest positive is 897, followed by 789, and then 879 is next, and then 897. So there's your list right there. Okay, so going to the next one, I want you to think about this for a second and then write down what you think. All right, why do you think -3 is less than -2? Why do you think -3 is less than -2? Now I want you to think about the number line and use that in your thinking. Well, if you think about it, on a number line, it's 3. It is -2 is it says it is 3 units left, while -2 is 2 units left. So this makes this less. All right, if you think of my number line, all right, and I have 0 in the middle right here. Here's my -1, -2, -3. So this is my -2 right here. And here's my -3. Since -3 is on the left of -2, that makes it less. Okay? Now, why is +3 less than +4? It's the same reason. 3 is left of 4. It's closer to the 0. That means that this is less. Now, that only works for the positive, okay? The bigger the negative, the smaller the number. And on positive stuff, the bigger the positive, the bigger the number. So -3 is on the left-hand side. Why is -4 less than +4? Well, because it's left of +4. That makes it least. And of course, finally, why is 4 greater than 0? Well, because it's on the right-hand side of 0. And as you go to the right, things get larger. All right, so let's get you started on the assignment, page 80. And if you have any questions, rewatch the video. And if not, we will see you in the unit final after this one's done. So take care. We'll see you later.